All right, let's get started. Looks like quite a few of you came to this session. I'm actually curious how many of you are excited about Experience Builder. All right, that's almost everyone. That's good. How many of you are anxious about what is coming up with Experience Builder? Not as many, but still quite a few folks. Well, I hope that you feel less anxious about Experience Builder after this session and as excited about it. But yeah, so my name is Lauri Timmani, formerly known as Lauri Eskola. I got married earlier this year, and that's why my last name changed. Thank you. I worked as a product lead for the Experience Builder. I work in Acquia's Drupal acceleration team. They're sponsoring me to work on open source things like the Experience Builder, which is great. I've been part of the Drupal community for the last 14 years. I've been doing Drupal a little bit longer than that, but 14 years is when I joined Drupal.org. And in the past, I've done some other contributions, like led the development of the Drupal core admin team, Claro. The agenda for today is that I'm briefly going to first talk about why I think that we need something like Experience Builder. Then we get to dig into what Experience Builder actually is. I am planning to at least try to do a live demo. We'll see how the demo gods behave today. So let's see. And then I'm going to give a brief update on where are we today, what are we expecting to get done on timeline-wise. And then we may have some time at the end for questions and answers that you might have. All right, so why do we need Experience Builder? You may have seen stats like this, where the blue line is showing all of Drupal going down, and then the red one is the modern Drupal, 8+, sort of plateauing, which might sound a little bit worrying. The reason why we are not more worried than we are is that the market size of Drupal hasn't necessarily decreased the same way as what that curve looks like, because of the size of the Drupal projects has increased. For example, in the 2022 Drupal business survey, 67% of the companies reported that they've seen an increase in the size of their projects, which probably is something that a lot of you have seen, that the projects that you as a Drupal agency are dealing with now are probably larger than what you had 10 years ago with Drupal. Obviously, the project sizes can grow indefinitely, so if we want to have the market size grow, we probably need to get more users and more agencies to adopt Drupal. So what are the reasons that more organizations are not choosing Drupal? I'm wondering if anyone has any guesses in the audience on what these reasons might be. Complexity, all right? Any other guesses? Cost as the second guess. Any other guesses? Learning curve. 3. All right, that's pretty good. So the first number one reason that organizations mention as the reason to not choose Drupal is because of it is expensive to build Drupal sites. Drupal is really good when you're building these complex sites. It provides you the right kinds of tools for that, but it also takes a lot of effort to build simple sites. We make it easy to build complex sites, but we make it hard to build easy sites. It's kind of how you could almost imagine it. The second reason is that competitors are seen as more user-friendly than what Drupal is, which you could maybe imagine contributing to the price as well, because of, organizations might be trying to compensate for that. And then the third one is, again, cost-related, where maintaining Drupal sites is usually more expensive than it is with other competitors. Kind of what I was alluding to before is that the reason why we're running into this cost problems and how these all three connect is that Drupal requires heavy customization, even to meet the basic needs of a unique project. So even if you're building a small Drupal project, usually the agency would be making some level of customization to the actual CMS experience. That's not specific to the actual customer's need. It's just building up the CMS for them. Many of the Drupal agencies have actually invested in their own install profiles to speed this process up so that their customers don't have to pay up for this. But that sets up a barrier for an agency to come in to use Drupal, because of now they have to invest in setting up their own install profile to be able to use Drupal and make it cost effective for customers. Some of these investment buckets might be things like developer experience improvements, building a decoupled framework or installation on top of Drupal. They could be things like improving the page builder, improvements on top of layout builder, maybe paragraphs. And then there's also the fact that there's so many different solutions out there that none of these things kind of connect together. It's unclear which options are the best. Different solutions come with different compromises, and it requires knowledge to evaluate what is the right solution for you. What Dries said earlier today is to set Drupal CMS as the gold standard for no-code website building. So what is the experience builder then playing as part of that? The Drupal CMS has been split into 3 sort of high-level buckets. The first one is to improve the installation experience. So that's how you download Drupal and then get it installed to get something running. The second part is configuration. How do you actually get a site running on top of Drupal? How do you actually implement the brand or implement the kinds of things that you want to display in your site? And then the third bucket is things like, how do you actually then take that site, launch it somewhere so that visitors can access your site? Where Experience Builder connects is the second part, which is to make configuring Drupal as easy as possible. So what Experience Builder is, it is a low-code editor for creating content and pages, building components, and managing site design. And this probably illustrates that Experience Builder is much more than what something like paragraphs or layout builder does in Drupal space today. Much broader scope than what we have in there. If you look at, for example, the creating content and pages, it could be something like building a landing page, building a one-off page for your front page. But it could be also things like setting up a list of things. That is also essentially building some kind of a page on your site. So ultimately, the scope for Experience Builder is to manage all of the aspects that actually lead into showing something visible for the end user. Dramatic pause for water. All right. So let's look into some additional concepts that we have then inside the Experience Builder. We have 4 different things that are very important to understand about the Experience Builder. So we have elements, components, sections, and page templates. Elements are the lowest level elements that exist in Experience Builder. They are ones that are usually the same across all different sites. They could be things like your buttons. They could be things like a container, maybe like a 2-column container. It could be even things like a link, paragraph. So very basic, very low-level specific things that don't usually, they're not depending on what kind of site you're building on. The second part, or second building block that we have is components. And components are built using those elements. So as you can see in the illustration, we have this square that is now inside this component. We have also the illustration of text inside there, and it's using the elements to construct the components. The elements is something that we are adding as a later on add-on that's specific to being able to build components through the UI. When you're building components using code, you might not actually be using these elements. You would still be using just HTML elements to do that. Then the third concept after the components is sections, and sections is not the same as what you would have sections be in Layout Builder. So sections are essentially composition of your components. They are one-off blueprints or recipes for your content creators to start creating content. That helps accelerate the creation of content. It also helps you sort of decompose some of the components so that you don't have to build extremely complex components that behave as these sections. So you have more flexibility in terms of you can decide, am I going to build this as a component when I allow content creators to reconstruct this, or are you going to build it as a component where everything is then a little bit more restricted? And then ultimately, all of these concepts, elements, components, sections lead into those actual page templates or pages that you've built. The experience builder is being built for 3 primary archetypes. So we have content creators, front-end developers or site builders, and designers, which I'm going to talk a little bit about, but it's a focus of a later phase for experience builder. So let's talk a little bit about content creators first. So when I've talked to content creators, something that I hear a lot them say is that I wish creating content on my website was like it's on all the other tools that I'm using. And name the tool. I wish it was like writing content on Google Docs. And that may sound scary because of, it is quite hard to emulate that experience. But that's what the content creators are telling. Ultimately, if you just empathize with the role of a content creator, it's not necessarily their job to write content on Drupal all day long. They usually have other responsibilities on their day-to-day job as well. So they don't necessarily want to learn a new tool in order to be able to publish content in the web. And that's why they want it to be as easy as possible. This is also a cost-related factor because if it takes a lot of effort for you to onboard your editors, that adds up as a training cost for organization. So in order to mitigate this challenge, what we've done is that we've changed completely the way that we are building software with the Experience Builder. So we moved into a user-centered design approach with the Experience Builder. So what we're doing is we are first figuring out what is it that the user expects from this software. We are writing our requirements based on that, and then we are designing based on the requirements that we've written. And then after that, we go back talking to the engineers and figuring out how can we actually connect that to the technology that we have. Obviously, there's some iteration that needs to happen because of, you can't create design in a vacuum. It needs to be feasible to implement in the end. But it's a massive change that we've made where design comes always first before we implement anything, and we are leading the whole development process with by having that experience in mind. All right, so I'm going to just refresh this page to start from a blank slate. So this is the actual head of Experience Builder. We might experience some interesting things in here, so we'll see how things play out. I can experience some slowness of this. Okay, now I can see this is working. So we can see previews of components, so it's easy for me to see what is it that we are adding to the page. I'm going to start by adding a hero component in here. I can just click here, and that allows me to start editing. And we can see all of the changes coming in live. I can add more things into the slot, and that works as well. So essentially, I'm now acting as if I'm a content creator. I'm dealing with components in here, not elements. We don't have elements existing in Experience Builder yet. We only have components and sections. I can also add a section, so I can click here. And the preview of the sections doesn't work yet, but at least I can add these things. And now we can see that added a whole bunch of different components on the page. We can also use the layers to dig in, and then we can see what is it that we actually have in here. I can also click in from here, and that allows me to also access the right sidebar. I can just right-click here. If I want to add another card there, I can duplicate that. We can also drag and drop components from section to another, and that's working. Some of the other things that we have, so we have things like undo. We are also looking into supporting things like copy and paste so that you can move components from a page to another or copy them within a single page. So it's going to truly feel like you are using something like a PowerPoint or Google Docs. So that's pretty much what we have implemented in the demo, in the Experience Builder today. We do have a bunch of sections and components that we've built. We are continuing to improve this experience based on the components that we have. There's a lot of things that we can see in here, but we have the basic foundation working for the content creators, and that's what we wanted to start with. All right. So, Experience Builder. Let me try to get the clicker working as well. Well, okay. Perfect. All right, so Experience Builder provides content creators an experience that should feel familiar to them from other tools that they're already accustomed to. That's the objective in terms of what the experience should feel like for a content creator. They should, even if they've never used Drupal before, they don't need to refer to documentation or anything. They can just go in the Experience Builder and start editing, and that the experience feels familiar to them. All right, the next part, which to me is one of the most exciting parts, is how the Experience Builder helps front-end developers. So when I've talked to front-end developers, the main gist of that conversation is that, why does it have to be so hard for me to implement this design in Drupal? Like, why do I have to learn how to massage this field into my design? Like, that's not something you have to do in React. The tool is basically just there for you to build the design. It doesn't get on your way. Whereas in Drupal, sometimes, it takes a lot of expertise to be able to do that. And that's where you may have heard the word single directory components come in, and they play a very big part in Experience Builder. Conceptually, this is what Drupal's presentation layer looks like today. So we have the storage, which then feeds into things like the entity display. So if you go to your field UI and editing your content type, the manage display in there, you can then take in things that are in the content type and decide how that's displayed. You can do a very similar kind of task in views and decide how am I going to list content from my entities. Block layout, similar kind of story again, but slightly different kinds of concepts that you have there. And then templates is what you use to actually design that experience. So this is where Experience Builder then comes in. This is what the presentation layer is going to look with it. So we are going to ultimately get rid of all of those things, the manage display, block layout, and views, and it's all going to be managed by Experience Builder. And that's what, when Dries was referring that Experience Builder will eat Drupal's admin UI, that's what it means, is that Experience Builder will be managing all of those things. What it means is that you can have your components defined in single directory components, and then you can use the Experience Builder to connect them to any data that you have in Experience in Drupal. In the meanwhile, while we have all of these concepts implemented, things like having a block exposed in Experience Builder is going to be supported. So for example, while we don't have support for styling your views using Experience Builder, we can expose the existing views blocks or menu blocks as Experience Builder components. So this is sort of the temporary solution for us to allow using Experience Builder when everything hasn't been implemented yet. You may have seen this is you don't have to read everything that is in here. This is a single directory component defining a card, and this is an example component from the demo design system that I used on that page. And the reason why this is important is that we use this JSON that is in the single directory component to build the form that is on the right side. So everything that is defined in that JSON file is used then within the Experience Builder to generate that form. The JSON that you have in the single directory component is your single source of truth of what is actually exposed in the Experience Builder. So if you want to expose something in the Experience Builder, all you have to do is create a single directory component for it, and it's going to show up in the Experience Builder. So going back just one more time, for example, you can see that there's an image. Image is a little bit more complex example because of its multiple properties that go to an image. So in that case, it's a little bit less straightforward to represent that, but even that, we have predefined solutions to represent that. What is also interesting to note is that the image is just an image, but the image can come from, again, from different sources. You could have an image coming from the media library, you could have the image coming from just a file upload, or you could have it coming from a DAM. So the component itself doesn't care about where the image is coming from. It's up to the experience builder to figure out, okay, what different sources do we have for an image, and then to translate that into the component. It just gives the properties that the image needs. The second part for developers that's going to be really helpful is template building. And this is something that I hope helps reduce some of your anxiety, because of you might be wondering what is happening to all of our content types that we have. Is it all going to be just landing pages now with Experience Builder? Disclaimer, it's not going to be just landing pages with Experience Builder. The page templates is how we are going to represent those content types that exist in Drupal. This kind of goes deeper into that. How do we actually connect components into data? So I have an example of a cart component. You could use the cart component to create a node content. So that could be a landing page. You could use it to create a node template. So that could be the actual page display for structured data. You could use it to create a block, maybe a navigation or a list with views. And then where we can get that data is it could be coming from a field, could be coming from multiple fields, could be even an entity reference into another entity, or it could be coming from a JSON external data point where you stated, okay, I want to fetch this from my WordPress site, and I want to show that in Drupal. If you're migrating from WordPress to Drupal, that could be a really handy way of getting started with Drupal in future. I have a non-live demo of this part, how the connecting of the components could look like, just to kind of help you visualize that. I click the image, then in there's a set variable, and then that connects it into an image field that exists on this event content type. And that's how easy from user experience perspective it could be to do this. So what Experience Builder will do for front-end developers, it provides them a way to create digital experiences and implement designs that match their brand without actually having to think about Drupal or the CMS itself. It's just going to be a helpful tool that is helping them rather than being on their way. And then we have designers, which is our later phase focus. We are not necessarily focused on designers right now. It's an important target audience for us because a lot of marketing focus projects have heavy focus on designers. So it is very important for us. And I do want to share sort of what is the vision for helping designers with Experience Builder. The pain point that we hear from designers is that they're frustrated that they have to always wait for developers to do anything. These marketing organizations are usually very fast-moving organizations. Like, let's imagine you need to launch a campaign for something and they want to go live in 3 days. It's not a great situation for anyone if you need a developer in that situation. I don't think a developer is happy when the marketing is calling you to know, hey, we need to launch this marketing site or marketing page in 3 days. Can you make this happen? Developers probably want to do something other than that. So that's why it's great, because of then if you can enable the marketer to do that, because of now, they can just go in there and do it themselves with the timeline that they have. So I have this is a mock-up, so this is not actually using the experience builder that we have. This is just to show what that vision could look like. So on the left side, we have a brand kit, which can represent the different aspects of your brand's token. So it could be things like logos, colors, fonts. It could be more complex things like your margins or paddings and whatever you need to represent your brand in this design system. You're not only limited to that. You can also do things like removing a block from this. So ultimately, the card that we see on the right side with the Drupal ready to take off is a block. I can just click that, press delete, and it's going to be gone. If we make changes to the fonts, you're going to see in the live preview how that's going to look like, how that sort of trickles down on your site. Very similar to editing the components. And then, you can kind of go wild and do crazy things, and you probably end up with something like this with Experience Builder ultimately. The great thing about this is that you're not limited just to a designer doing something. The designer can now call into the developer if they need something more advanced. So let's imagine a use case where the designer wanted to add an image carousel. They wanted to highlight more than 3 images on this event promotion. So they call the developer, and the developer might be a little bit confused at first because they think that the designer has gone wild on their Drupal side and just done a bunch of things as a site builder. And then usually the perception is that that's kind of a dead end. You can't really, as a developer, go in and add a bunch of code to help with that. But what Experience Builder actually allows you to do is allows you to export your code, no-code components that you created through the user interface, export them into code. When they become single directory components, just like any single directory component that you've created in code. And now you can edit it as a developer. So now the developer can take that single directory component created by the designer and make it into an image carousel. And that's sort of where then our job as a developer comes in. You may have a designer coming in, creating 80% or 90% a version of your design. And then if there's something advanced that needs a developer's help, then that's when you as a developer can go in there, press export as a single directory component, and then you can make changes to the code when you do that. So the goal for Experience Builder in regards to helping designers is to allow them to customize the site design in collaboration with developers. So it's a platform for designers and developers to collaborate on. All right. So that's the vision for the Experience Builder. Where are we today in terms of implementing all of this? That might sound like that's a lot of work for us to do, and it is. So ultimately, what we've done now is we did a demo today. So there was demo in the Dries node, and I did a live demo today to prove that there is actually working application that we can use. And the primary audience for this was Drupal developers. What we're hoping to do, what we are striving to do, is that in 6 months, we are going to have an open source early preview of the Experience Builder with the target audience of the front-end developer and content creators, so that we have those content creator and front-end developer facing capabilities in a good enough state for people to actually start testing in their environment, as in like maybe as part of the distribution that your agency has, or as part of the setup that your agency has. The goal is to have a launch happening later in 2025, currently targeted at Q3, so summer of 2025. And then after that, after we have a stable release of Experience Builder, we would start focusing more on those designer-facing capabilities. You might be wondering, how can I help with this? This is a lot of work. You're right. Some of the things that would be really helpful for us is if you have any feedback on the vision that we have, now is a great time to make course corrections on that. So if you have any input, something more that you need, that you believe that your business could need, or that you would need, that would be great. Something else that is really helpful is to start building SDC-based design systems, because of if we have more SDC-based design systems available when Experience Builder comes out, that will make it much easier for someone less experienced, someone who hasn't used Drupal before, to get started with Experience Builder and Drupal. That will accelerate their progress significantly. We also have a lot of issues in the Experience Builder queue, as you might imagine. So you can either come help with individual issues that we have. This week is great. We have quite a few folks in the sprints going to be around working on Experience Builder. So come talk to me or the others. By the way, who has contributed to Experience Builder? Because of that might be a good to keep track of who are those folks, so that you can go talk to them and ask for help if you want to contribute. Raise your hand, everyone who has contributed, just one more time. All right. So these are the folks that have made Experience Builder happen. Maybe we should give a round of applause for them, and then also go So they're the folks who you can talk to, or me, if you want to help with an issue. We also have opportunities for agencies to take ownership of specific tracks of Experience Builder. So if that's something that you're interested in, come talk to me or Gabor, and we can then kind of help figure out what would be a good match for the type of team that you have available to help with a track. Usually, leading a track requires a little bit more of a commitment. It might require experience in design, front-end development, and back-end development to be successful. But that's something that we definitely are happy to accommodate if you're interested in that. So in summary, Drupal's Experience Builder will enable site builders without Drupal experience to easily theme and build their entire website using only their browser. And it will enable content creators to compose content on any part of the page without relying on developers. Unlike competing tools, it will be better for content reuse across channels and managing content at large scale because it will enforce data and design consistency. That's the mission statement for the Experience Builder. There's a couple related sessions at this DrupalCon. There's a session on single directory components, which is tomorrow, and there's a session on Drupal plus modern JS without going headless on Thursday, which also connects into the Experience Builder, because they're going to be talking about the architecture that is enabling Experience Builder as well to use React the way that it works today. If you don't want to come talk to us today, there's other ways to get involved. You can go just to the Drupal.org project, or you can come to the Drupal Slack Experience Builder. So before we go into the Q&A, I have a brief survey that I would like all of you to fill. All right. If you need more time, you can still fill in the form. I think we can also start thinking about if there are any questions on the Experience Builder. There was one question on the app, which I'm going to start with. How do you plan to manage the upgrade path for the Experience Builder in the context of Drupal core and Drupal CMS? So if that question is specific to how would you migrate from Layout Builder or paragraphs into Experience Builder, that's my assumption. That might not be. I'm a little bit confused because it says about Drupal core and Drupal CMS, but I'm going to give an answer in the context of Layout Builder and paragraphs, and if there's clarifications to the question, feel free to make those. So on the initial release of Experience Builder, there's not going to be a migration path from Layout Builder or paragraphs necessarily, but we are keeping in mind already how would we actually eventually build that type of migration path from Layout Builder or paragraphs. Especially with Layout Builder, there's a lot of modules that extend Layout Builder, so it's going to be very challenging to provide a very holistic upgrade path. However, if you are in a fairly standard installation of Layout Builder, it should be possible for us to do fairly straightforward migration from Layout Builder into Experience Builder. Some of the ideas that we have about the migration path is that Layout Builder, paragraphs, and Experience Builder can all live side by side, and then you can do we provide migration where you can do migration one by one. And you could even enable your content creators to do some of that migration in the sense that when they go to edit your content, they can click a button which says move to Experience Builder, and they can see if what it's going to look like through the preview. And if there's some small things that are broken, they can fix that. If it doesn't work, then they can just cancel and go back to the old experience and sort of talk to their developer to figure out how to fix that situation.
Keyboard strategy. So in the project pipeline, when that's going to be relevant.
So the question is about keyboard support for the Experience Builder, and it's referring to a specific issue in the issue queue where we're talking about keyboard support. So keyboard support is already being introduced slowly but steadily. Not all of the actions are supported through keyboard yet. I would say that keyboard support is relevant for the early phases of this, but at the moment we are thinking about it more from like conceptual perspective to make sure that we can actually implement something like that eventually on top of this. So even in the initial releases, there might not be a full-on keyboard support for the experience builder, but the key tasks that someone would have to do there will have that, and that's both for accessibility as well as for power user use cases, because of they will also benefit from being able to use the keyboard for those tasks. That's definitely one of the areas where we can take contributions in case that someone is interested in working on that. So we are open to contributions on that. So yeah, that's my take on it. Any other questions? There's one at the back. So correct me if I heard you right. Does the components that we have in the experience builder use the styles of the theme that has been specified? Yes. So ideally, everything will be in a single directory components eventually. So everything will go through the single directory components, but there's always probably going to be some global CSS, like maybe your fonts or base styles. Those are loaded from the theme. Any styles that you have in the theme are actually loaded in the experience builder. So the preview looks just like if you are viewing it on the actual front end of the site. So they are loaded in there. So that is one of the follow-up question was, is there an idea of having more themes like what WordPress has? And yes, it is part of the focus is to at least start with one really solid starting point, to have a default design system that organizations can use. Starting point. Probably having more would be beneficial. So we are looking, especially as part of the Starshot, to see if there are ways for us to provide multiple of themes. I do think that Experience Builder does, because it makes the component system decoupled from the actual data model and sort of what you have implemented in the site. It makes it now possible, or significantly easier to implement these kinds of community provided themes compared to what it was before. Because right now, if you provide a community provided theme, it needs to ship both the data model and the theme together, because of those are interconnected with Drupal. So even if it's not part of the official scope of the Experience Builder Starshot, I believe it provides the opportunity for community to even potentially premium design systems, because now it is a concept that is easy to implement in Drupal. The question is, when you link your component to when you link a component to a field, where are the field formatters? And the question is that field formatters in that case don't necessarily exist at all. There's a different concept which allows you to do similar things to a field formatter. So maybe if I go back to that video. You can see that there's a add transform button over there. And that's where you can add transformations to that link, which allows you to do similar kinds of things that the field formatters are doing today. So you could do something like add a prefix, add a suffix, or you could do you could format a date using that. You could apply an image style using that. So basically, everything that you would do with a field formatter today can exist in different concepts in the experience builder. Any additional questions there, Swan? Okay, so the question is that there was a mention of React-based admin UI before, and how the experience builder fits with that, as well as is there now a need for these single directory components to be built using React? All right, so the experience builder is being built using React. So from that perspective, it does fit the vision of building a React-based admin UI. And so how the experience builder works is that the canvas of the experience builder, so the right sidebar, the top bar, the layers on the left, even the annotations that you saw, like the borders or the name of the component, all of those are rendered by React today. However, the preview that you saw in there is still rendered by Drupal. So we're just using React to call Drupal to get the preview from there, so, which means that single directory components can work just like they are today, and they're built using Twig. So that continues to work going forward. We're going to have both React, which is the admin UI, and then Twig is for the actual end user facing site. There could be a separate conversation that should we have a way for someone to build their front end with React and have it rendered with Experience Builder. And that's something that Experience Builder is agnostic to right now. That's something that we could definitely add in there if we just make it work in there. And I believe that there's probably going to be people who are interested in making that work. But it doesn't mean that you still couldn't do it with Twig if that's the preferred solution that you have. All right, I think we are out of time. Thank you, everyone.